Not guilty 10
Charles
times.
Manson, described today by the star witness
Jury
again.
in the so-called Night Stalker case reached its verdict today.
Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of
The woman
murder.
suspected of shooting Selena is still holding police at
Music
bay.
producer Phil Spector was convicted
In
Monday.
Los Angeles, a killer the police are calling the Hillside Strangler.
Do you find that Mr. Depp has proven all the elements of defamation? Answer, yes.
Hi everyone, welcome back to LA Legal. I'm Liana, this is Nima, and this is a very special bonus episode where we'll be talking about Casey Anthony.
Could we have picked a worse case for the bonus episode? Normally the bonus is supposed to be something good. Probably the worst decided case in recent U.S. history.
Okay, so maybe I shouldn't mention that I've been begging the marketing team to talk about this because I think that, everybody knows OJ, right? Everyone talks about how the jury got it wrong. But this is just as bad. The jury got it so wrong, and this
Oh my God, even worse. I
yeah.
got Nicole Brown. Don't get me wrong. Whenever you're dealing with a dead kid and a baby who was killed by her own mother, at least allegedly. I don't think it gets worse than that.
No. I mean, this was terrible. And little fun fact, this was actually the first trial I ever watched as it was happening. 2008, I had just graduated high school. I guess I'm aging myself. But
that makes me feel very old because I watched OJ in high school. So
well, there you go. OJ, Casey Anthony, same thing. So let's get the ball rolling. I'm super excited. Very briefly, Casey Anthony was born March 19th in 1986 in Ohio. She was one of two children, two parents, Cindy and George Anthony. Throughout her life, she's been known to tell various lies to her parents, including being eligible for graduation when she was not, lying to her parents about being a virgin when she was not. So in 2005, she has her daughter, Caylee Anthony. Casey actually didn't know this, but she didn't want the daughter. She wanted to give her up for adoption, and her mother convinced her to keep the baby. So
wow. Okay. So
this gives me a motive.
Yeah. Well, look, we're going to be talking about George and Cindy a lot. Obviously, Casey and her lies, lie after lie. I didn't know she lied about being a virgin. I know she lied about who the father was, and we're going to be talking about everything Casey and Caylee related.
I came prepared. Look at this. I've been typing this all day. This is facts.
Single space. Yeah, Casey Anthony's lies over the years.
These are contracts outlines here. So, this whole thing kind of unraveled July 15, 2008, when Cindy Anthony, the mom, called 911 and reported Caylee missing. Caylee at the time is 3 years old. So in the 911 tape, she says that Casey, her daughter, told her that she took the baby to the babysitter, and she hasn't been seen since. This is now 31 days after the child goes missing.
Okay, so this is the first lie, right?
First.
The babysitter lie. Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we're keeping track of Casey Anthony's lies. This is a big one.
You're going to need a notepad. Yeah. So anyway, investigators show up to the house. They start interviewing Casey. Very quickly, they realize that she's sending them on a wild goose chase. And so this thing kind of starts to unravel. Let's talk about the interview with the first detective, right? Because the first question is, well, who's the babysitter? She says it's Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez. And she tells the detective that that she took the baby without permission, and I don't know where she's at, okay? In trial, her father, George Anthony, testified that Casey told him, me and Caylee are going to go spend the night with the nanny. So that's lie number 2, right? And so what really, I think, swayed a lot of people and caught investigators off guard is her lack of emotion, her lack of urgency. You have your kid missing for 31 days.
Yeah, and the only reason you don't even call yourself. Your mom calls, grandma calls, really. And what are you doing this whole time?
Right. Let's talk about what she's doing this whole time.
Well, she's popping bottles, right?
She's popping bottles. I have it right here. So events that transpired during the 31 days, right? So she, as I mentioned, she says, I'm taking Caylee. We're going to spend the night with the nanny. A few days later, there's surveillance footage. The following day, there's surveillance footage of her at Blockbuster with her boyfriend, okay? Blockbuster existed at the time. No Caylee in sight, okay? The surveillance footage shows them laughing, kissing, hugging, seemingly having a wonderful time. A few days after that, she enters a hot body contest.
No.
Okay, this is a woman. Okay, she's 22, but, you're still a mother. Her child is allegedly missing. You enter a hot body contest. Following day, she goes shopping, and she goes back to the same nightclub. A few days after that, she goes to a tattoo parlor, gets a tattoo, Bella Vita, which means the beautiful life. A few days after that, she goes clubbing again. She's popping bottles. She's hanging out with her friends and her boyfriend. 18 days later, her mom, after 18 days after the disappearance, her mom shows up at Universal, where Caylee works.
Supposedly. Lie number 2, right?
Lie number 2.
Yeah, the Universal lie.
Where she works, and she says, I haven't seen my granddaughter in 18 days. Where is she? What's going on? And she says, hey, we're out of town, so I don't know why you're at work. I work. We're out of town. Lie number 3.
Yeah.
They're not out of town. Goes to a July 4th party. And then this is finally when mom tracks her down, says, what the hell's going on? And makes that call.
Yeah.
What do you make of this?
Casey Anthony's a liar. The nanny lie, the Universal lie, I think those were really, really damning. Obviously, the jury saw through that. We're going to be talking a lot about that. But let's talk about something else, and the car being impounded, right?
Yes.
So she got this car. It's dad's car, but I don't know how it gets impounded, but it gets impounded. And then that's when the tow yard detects the smell, right?
It's impounded probably when she's out drinking and getting sloppy, and so
Yeah, like how many parking tickets do you gotta get? Like I don't understand. I don't really understand how the car got impounded, but it's at the tow yard and it just smells like a dead body.
Right, it smells like a dead body, and this is what's interesting. And we'll talk about it later. But in trial, just the testimony between the experts and how and the this thing is just so juicy. Okay, so let's talk about the search.
Okay, yeah. So then dad gets the car back. So why doesn't dad call?
Look, there's clearly something very wrong with the family. But I can say this. I have listened to the tapes. I've listened to the 911 calls. I don't think you can fake that kind of frantic emotion, right? The mom is clearly like distraught. Like, what the hell happened to this kid, right? Where is she? My granddaughter's missing. And contrast that with Caylee, who's just like, I don't know.
Oh, yeah. I mean, she clearly...
Nanny took her. I don't know. She's gone. You have kids. If your kid's missing for a minute,
Of
aren't
course.
you like...
She gives 2 shits. She's the worst mom probably in U.S. history, at least one of them.
Yeah.
Maybe up there with like Andrea Yates style, killing her kids in the bathtub.
Yeah.
So she doesn't care. Grandma cares. And I know we're kind of jumping back and forth. I want to talk about Cindy later and her testimony about the search history and stuff because, we have this sort of caring grandma who later, at least I think, may have done something to try to protect her daughter.
Right. So let's talk about the search warrant, right? Okay. So now, 911 call happens. Investigators are on the scene. They kind of went back and forth. Oh, she takes them on a wild goose chase. She takes them to 3 separate apartment buildings. Actually, the first question they ask her is, where does this nanny live? And she says, well, I'm not really sure about the address. Mind blown. How do you drop off your 3-year-old child, your baby, to someone and you don't know where it is? So she takes them around to 3 different apartment buildings. No one's heard of a Zanny the nanny. No one's heard of Caylee. No one's seen her. So they get a search warrant to search their home. So this is where the car comes in and then just some of the things that they found. So they bring in the dogs, right?
The cadaver dogs,
the
right?
cadaver dogs. And they signal almost immediately.
Yeah, they hit on the vehicle, obviously.
A smell.
Yeah, body's been in there for weeks.
Okay.
Decomposing body.
All right. So question for you, because the testimony in trial was that the dogs are unreliable, right? That was the defense's point, right? There's no scientific, way to measure. They're trained by the handler. And so, talk to me about a little bit about
Yeah, I mean, look, I love dogs, and I've handled a lot of these cases as a former prosecutor. Obviously, we all know about drugs, Dogs are on it. They alert like that. But these dogs are amazing. You got cadaver dogs. We actually had dogs that could detect money, believe it or not. Bulk cash. So drugs come north from Mexico and Central America, South America, and the United States, and the money goes south. So a lot of people don't know this, but there's dogs that actually sniff the money leaving the country. Lots of cash. So if dogs can sniff money, they can certainly sniff out a dead body. And you don't need dogs. You have lay witness testimony that it smelled like a rotting corpse.
Right. And so the defense theory was that the smell came from a bag of trash that was left behind in the car, rotting in the Florida sun.
Yeah. Yeah. Good luck with that.
I mean, look, I'm no, decomposing body expert, but I would imagine, I've never even smelled one, thank God, but I would imagine there's a very big distinction between rotting human flesh and a trash bag that's been left out.
And you have the scientific evidence. They're testing the chemicals, Trash and flesh emit different chemicals. In fact, 30 of them, and the experts came and they testified that they were all present in the trunk of the vehicle.
And so the reason I'm hammering down on this is because this kind of goes to the fact that ultimately, right, she wasn't convicted. And so the defense theories, in my mind, are just so far-fetched, right? If I'm in the jury and I'm listening to this and they're like, no, it was a bag of trash, like, what?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with jurors that made a mistake, certainly. And Florida jurors are notorious for being unpredictable. Casey Anthony, of course, the biggest example of that. But, we talked about OJ earlier in the season, and, right now, like, DNA evidence is very widely accepted, right? The defense in OJ did a good job discrediting DNA evidence. Now we know it's pretty much foolproof. And I think this was something relatively new. We had search history kind of experts come in. We have these experts that are testifying about the chemicals that a body emits upon passing and how it changes over time. Look, I think the defense did a good job muddying the waters, but you also had jurors that did a very poor job understanding the science, in my opinion.
So I was actually watching an interview with Dr. Furton, who had testified for the defense at the time. And now, when asked, he says that his line of questioning was limited to just talking about the chemistry makeup. He's like, if I would have been allowed to talk about the dogs, I would have said with more definitively that it's very likely a decomposing body. He goes, but when I'm limited to what I can say, then I'm just limited to the chemistry, to the science, and perhaps it wasn't as advanced in 2008. And so, I think the defense, you're right, did a great job putting him on the stand and muddying up the waters, so to speak. So let's talk about the family computer, because this was a big one.
Yes, this is a big one.
So take it away.
So you got your family community, and really the big issue is the chloroform, right? This is the chemical that was used to kill Caylee. In addition to the duct tape, and we're going to talk about that. But I mean, this was really important. The defense theory of the case. Let's just take a step back, right? The defense, in their opening, we find out the theory of the case, which is absolutely insane. But here's what it was: Caylee died because of an accidental drowning, right? So that's explanation one. And the reason for all of Casey Anthony's lies were because she was abused by her father, George. So that's it. So let's kind of take that step by step. The accidental drowning. Well, that's not consistent with the chloroform, and that's not consistent with duct tape, right? So
it's not consistent with logic.
Of course.
Your kid drowns, you're going to put them in a bag and toss them in the woods?
Yeah, makes no sense. But that search history was important, right? Because the defense really poked a hole in there. So the prosecution is introducing this evidence of this search history, right? And saying that, someone searched for this chloroform like 80 some odd times. Well, it turns out that their science was wrong, and the search was conducted once. So that was bad, man. If you're the prosecution, if you're the state of Florida in a death penalty case, you got to have your ducks lined up, and you can't tell the jurors that whatever it was 80 some odd searches when it was really one. So that was bad. But then the important thing about the search history is and there's all these other searches, right, about sort of a means of death and that type of thing.
Yeah, like strangulation.
Versus, all sorts of things that you shouldn't be searching. But the chloroform is the most important because that's something that no one would search for. It's a rarely used search. And here's the important thing. And again, I can't believe this happened, but Cindy, mom, took the stand. And she said that she searched for it because of some plant tissue. Yeah. I mean, get out of here. So and by the way, she was working at the time, so she wasn't even home. So I don't know if she perjured herself. I don't know if she was mistaken. I don't know if she wanted to protect her daughter. But I think the search history, especially right now, people's search history is so damning. But you have this search for this rare term, and you got mom saying that it was her. First of all, I didn't think it was believable. But was she trying to protect her daughter?
Look, if your kid, I guess, is in hot water like Casey was, maybe, right? I don't know. You have never been in that position. I haven't either. But we're talking about a cold-blooded killer here. That's just let's call it what it is. She killed her little baby girl for seemingly no reason, right? I don't think it was an accident, whether it was the pool, right? Because they said she climbed down the ladder, fell in the pool, drowned. I don't think it was accidental because if you're a loving grandparent, loving mother, father, whatever, if it's an accident, you don't know if that child could be saved, right? What do you do immediately? What would a normal person do is you call 911 and you let the paramedics figure it out. Yeah. I mean, people call 911 after they think someone's died and they still hope to God that you can resuscitate them, that put them on life support, whatever. So the accidental thing, no matter how you try to spin it makes no sense to me, right?
Yeah, it makes no sense whatsoever. I agree. I mean, the kind of whole pool story, and supposedly Casey was in custody, and there was another female inmate there whose kid had drowned, and that's where she got the story. I mean, that's what the argument is. But let's also talk about the lies and the molestation, right? So the defense comes out. They say George was sexually abusing Caylee, and that's what made her just sort of lie. She's kind of dealing with his trauma, and this is how she kind of escapes from it. And the first person they put on the stand is George Anthony, dad. Now, listen, I get how if you're the state, you want to kind of get ahead of bad evidence. You want to take control of the narrative, make that person your witness. But you don't want to start out with a witness like that. You really kind of want to start strong if you're the prosecution. You have a witness who's really kind of more of a defense witness, right? Or at least they think he's the culpable person. You got to put that person later, man. You got to start with the law enforcement and make everyone really hate Caylee. Talk about the lies, and I think that's a mistake that the state made.
Oh, okay, it's interesting.
Yeah, we like to say it's primacy and recency. So you want to start strong, you want to finish strong. Any kind of potentially problematic witnesses, you kind of want to sandwich them in the middle.
Right. Well, okay, let me ask you this. You're a prosecutor, right? And this is the defense theory. I really am struggling and have been trying to put two and two together. Okay, so maybe she's molested. I mean, that's awful, right? And so maybe that gives her some kind of trauma, PTSD, and that explains the lying. Okay. How does that explain what happened to the baby, right? Like, where's the connection there? I'm not seeing it. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I don't see the connection. I really don't. And the problem is, this is a case that, the reason I was like, we said this is a bonus case, but I still think it's either this or OJ. If you ask people, you ask lawyers, I still cannot understand the logical connection. Okay, sexual abuse is bad. I'm not saying Caylee Anthony was not sexually abused by her father.
No, not at all.
I mean, we have no idea. But that cannot explain. You might hate your dad. You might have trauma. It's not an explanation.
And that's what I'm saying. Maybe you become, so everybody reacts to trauma differently. Maybe you become a liar because of that. Okay, fair enough. I'm on board. But what happened to the daughter and how the dad's sexual abuse or whatever ties in?
Yeah, so, and we're talking about now, we're talking about, I know we're short on time, so, in terms of the jury verdict, look, you got this jury verdict, it comes back in, a couple days, right? I think most people think quick verdict, you're going to get a guilty verdict, and the whole world is shocked.
Oh, absolutely.
They come back, not just hung, not guilty. Unbelievable, right? You got a 12-0 not guilty. People think, again, wrongly decided. You have jurors that are coming out giving interviews saying that
they didn't see a motive.
Didn't see a motive.
That's a direct
it's crazy
quote.
that the state didn't prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. Obviously, we agree. But one thing I do look, it's been years now. It's been more than 10 years since the verdict. And I think now you have jurors, and obviously they're doing documentaries now, and kind of Caylee's getting out there a little bit more, giving interviews. But you have jurors that are finally saying, listen, I think we made the wrong decision. I should have stood up for Caylee. Obviously, too little, too late. Jeopardy's attached. Caylee Anthony will never get justice. I mean, look, she was convicted on some bullshit, lying to the police officer counts.
Child neglect.
Yeah, she got 4 years for that. Went up on appeal. They dropped 2 of them because they're really kind of 2 different sets of lies. But she really got time served, like slap on the wrist.
Look, I think, and obviously it's no secret, I disagree with the jury, but I think there was a clear motive all the way through, right? Her behavior for those 31 days is very indicative of the fact that she just didn't want to be a mom, the fact that she never wanted the baby to begin with. She wanted to put her up for adoption. That didn't happen. She's forced into sort of this motherhood.
Yeah. You got motives, means, opportunity, everything you need. So.
And then in one of the jail calls with her brother's girlfriend, she says, "My family only loves Caylee. All they care about is her." I mean, that to me signifies resentment, right? So now this is your 3-year-old daughter that's missing, and you are sad that your family's concerned about the kid, right? I mean, the motive's there. I mean, no 100%. Questions asked. So, I struggle. I mean, all of these notes, and I'm like, how did you guys get it so wrong?
No, definitely. I would say, just kind of in closing, we're really talking about one of the biggest injustices
100%.
in U.S. American history in terms of our criminal justice system. Really kind of a failure of our jury system. So hopefully this is kind of the last we hear about Caylee Anthony. I don't want to hear her name. I know we're talking about
Well, she just came out with a documentary.
Oh,
so, and I will say this, though. People are actually, I kind of watch the thoughts that people have on the documentary. And a lot of people are now coming out and saying, well, we feel bad for her. You know, maybe her dad did it. And these are, by the way, like the new generation. I'm like, guys, you weren't there. You were not watching this thing unfold. Like, you
people
cannot
feel bad for serial killers and school shooters. You probably have some crazies that feel bad for Caylee. I do not
There's
feel
nothing
bad
to
for
feel
her.
bad.
She got away with murder. A parent's number one job is to protect their child. And if you don't do that, you don't deserve any sympathy in my book.
Absolutely. Wow. I can't even say anything. That's a great line. Thank you for that. Thank you guys for allowing us to do this topic finally. And for the rest of you, thanks for tuning in. And we'll see you season 3.
Yeah, we'll see you next season. And yeah, thanks for doing this bonus episode. See you guys.